Recently, I've been thinking about nostalgia. I'm sure it's just confirmation bias, but it's felt like current media has invested a lot of time and energy not into generating fresh new ideas or taking risks, but instead into tickling that part of our brains that says, I remember that. So I wanted to put out a video discussing this phenomenon and how it affects both audiences and creators. Because I'm always interested in looking at concepts from the perspective of someone making decisions in their writer's room. Now, this video will have some good things to say about nostalgia and some bad things. Cause like any concept, nostalgia isn't perfect. I just want you as a viewer to keep in mind that when I criticize this concept and or the media that uses it, I'm not insulting you. A lot of people tend to latch onto specific projects and perceive any slights against said project as slights against them. But that is, by definition, an exercise in media illiteracy. Just because I don't like something doesn't mean I think I'm better than you. I think I'm better than you because I'm good at sports ball. But I digress. Let's all be kind to one another, and especially kind to me. Hey, Realm Spinner, hit that spoiler list, my boy. So, what's nostalgia? If you're watching this and don't know by now, I'm absolutely shooketh. But it's okay, I'll explain anyway. Nostalgia is kind of like a drug. It's a feeling of sentimentality toward the past, warranted or otherwise. Time warps our minds, so we sometimes see what was through rose-colored glasses, which dulls the edges of things we don't like and sharpens our focus on things we do. While this feeling is generally personal, a writer with any modicum of skill will find it easy to tap into this power. In fact, entire aesthetics have been made around it. Think of the generational nostalgia media can evoke just by choosing a specific setting. Or the retroactive nostalgia ancient media can give an audience that shouldn't be up this late, grandpa. It's not difficult to wield this tool as a writer, nor is it difficult to identify and experience this effect as an audience member. And that's in part what makes this concept interesting, its universal appeal. Now, I'm not here to say nostalgia is the worst. I think there are ways to wield it effectively without overdoing it. An unlikely example is actually in the subject of my latest rewrite, Tom Cruise's mom.
What?
I mean Tom Cruise's mummy. In that movie, there's a blink and you'll miss it scene where the book from The Mummy 1999 shows up. Neat. It's not in your face, but if you know, you know. You know? I wouldn't call it egregious, I wouldn't call it offensive, I wouldn't call it late to dinner.
Stop it. Get some help.
That is when I think nostalgia works best. When it's not in your face. I'm also fine with nostalgic settings to an extent, because if you want to set your story in the 80s, go ahead, I'm not part of the time police. Both options work as what I generally refer to as background nostalgia. They're not super essential to the story, at least mechanically, so if you're not in on whatever it is they're calling back to, you don't really lose anything. There are also instances of nostalgia that are organic. These moments are built from existing characters acting in accordance with the plot. I find these fine too, if they aren't repeated multiple times over the course of the narrative. Because if they are, they can easily distract from new ideas by dragging audiences from present back to past. Contrast what we just discussed with what I'd call foreground nostalgia. This is a version of nostalgia that is in your face. It's when the writer wants you as an audience member to sit up and point at your screen or clap. You ever watch a movie where something happens and there's this pregnant pause? And it works in the theater, but at home it's kind of awkward? Yeah, that's foreground nostalgia. Or at least one aspect of it. Remember how I said nostalgia is a drug? If not, don't you think it's time for bed, Grandpa? Yes, nostalgia is a drug. And like all drugs, in excess, it becomes a poison. From a writing perspective, and running full sprint with this metaphor, I consider nostalgia to be a sedative. It's meant to placate your audience without effort and shortcut emotional payoff, because it takes no effort to have a callback. In Alien Romulus, when a certain character says a certain line and the movie pauses for applause, it doesn't really make sense for the character or the situation. But the line happens anyway so that someone in the audience can go, "He said it!" In The Rise of Skywalker, a Jedi Master's gotta lift an X-Wing, cause a disgusting little goblin did it in that other movie. You could argue that there's only the vaguest amount of difference between scenes like this and scenes like the Book of the Dead one from Tom Cruise's Mummy. And that's fair. But I'd counterpoint that we're discussing emotions and writing, which are both subjective. It's difficult to adequately quantify satisfaction, so attempting to is futile. Maybe the only difference is that one felt less self-congratulatory than the others. Or maybe I just hold those other films to higher standards. Who knows? Who cares? My main point is that while nostalgia is a drug for the audience, it is a crutch for a writer. If you include a character in your movie whose main purpose is to be a reminder of what was, you don't need as much legwork to develop them. If you don't know how to draw emotions from your audience organically, you can always fall back upon what worked before, and people will eat it up, which is their prerogative, but not my cup of tea, because I'm better than them. This trend of relying on nostalgia has been worrying to me, because nostalgia, inherently, is nothing new. At its best, it's still relying on past work to create current success, which isn't necessarily bad, but at its worst, it feels like a cheap ploy by some studio exec in their McMansion to add a few zeros to their movie's box office returns. How many times are we going to see the Rebels versus the Empire? How many times are we going to get a Superman or Batman movie instead of any other DC character? Why is Robert Downey Jr. Doctor Doom? Nostalgia is familiar, so nostalgia is safe. And that is why I worry. Because studio execs say, Blue Beetle didn't fail because it was kind of generic, it failed because it wasn't soups or bats. They say, Spider-Man must never be married or have kids because readers will reject him. They say, Kid Boruto must look and act and fight like Kid Naruto for part 1 of the series, otherwise people won't tune in. They say, turn The Hobbit into Lord of the Rings, even though it never was or should be. They say, what do you mean this character in The Mandalorian Season 2 is leaving? Put him or her back so we can keep making bank. To audiences, nostalgia is a sedative. To writers, nostalgia is a crutch. And to executives, nostalgia is a blinder. Because in the end, these producer types only want one thing, and it's disgusting. Maybe that's why I have such a visceral reaction to when nostalgia is thrust upon me. Because to me it feels disingenuous. But maybe that's a personal thing. I am a time cop after all. I mean, I'm not. I'm definitely not. Also, I'm not saying that we need completely new plot lines and characters that have never been done before. That is legitimately impossible this late into humanity's story. But what I am saying is that I don't want to go into a movie hoping for a fresh new story, only to realize I've been tricked into a rerun. Because at the end of the day, media that relies so heavily on this concept tends to lack the oomph of its predecessors. And the thing about these nostalgic moments, ironically enough, is that they're so forgettable. That's it for this one. Like and subscribe, because I've got movie rewrites, essays, series fixes, and whatnot in the works. And until the next one, cheers.